forward his former lawyer and said, he told us that he did this alone, et cetera, et cetera. Even before that, I said, I can't imagine that a prosecutor would actually, in effect, vouch for the credibility of this witness. So they would probably try to make the case around, try to make a case without using him as a witness. This manufacturer who was the head of the National Enquirer, he was called today as a witness. Then there was a man in Reasons, something or other, who was the former chief economic officer of the company. He's testified. Maybe conceivably I think they have three options. Either make the case without, and that's why I think the grand jury is meeting now, why they delayed this, because they have to see whether or not these other witnesses can present a sufficiently compelling case to warrant prosecution. So that's one option. Make the case with them use phone. That would be ethical if you do that. Make the case using phone. That would not be ethical. That would be that would pass the test of legal ethics, or some players think it would. And third, don't bring the case at all. Grand juries are supposed to protect the rights of defendants. That's why the grand jury provision was put into the Constitution of the United States as the Bill of Rights. Grand juries don't serve that purpose. As Judge Walker said, famously, the grand jury will that a ham sandwich the prosecutor asks them to. Occasionally, though, you find a grand jury that will stand up for the prosecutor. And I wonder whether this grand jury is sending signals in that way. There's 24 people in the grand jury, 13 to indict. Costello, the lawyer at home, was not called by Bragg to testify. He volunteered to testify. Under New York law, he had to be presented to the grand jury for a vote to see whether they wanted to testify. The grand jury must wonder, why didn't they present it? They presented such compelling evidence that Cohen was lying. Why did they hide that from us? He said there were 300 emails from Cohen to him involving lying. Why did you present only 6 to us and keep the other almost 300 from us? So the grand jury may be having some doubts. There were also young people in Bragg's office, some of them are not former students, who are honorable young men who boasted belonging to one of the greatest prosecution offices in the history of the United States. This is an office that used to be headed by Bob Morgenthau, by Frank Hogan. People used to whistle on the way to work. It was such a great job to work with the district attorney of Manhattan. Do these young people really want to be part of their legacy as part of their resume? I worked for District Attorney Bragg, whose job was to get Trump, and he tried to get him in federal. That's not a great legacy. So I don't know what's going to happen. In the book Get Trump, I go through all 4 of the cases against Trump, not just the first one. So, what are the other things? 2 of them have no legal foundation at all. One of them has a legal foundation, but won't be drawn. So let me explain what they are. First, there is the telephone call that Donald Trump made. No doubt about it. We have the call. You can Google Trump call to the Secretary of State, and you'll hear it on your own ears. And he says, I think I'm quoting correctly, I have to find 13,000 and maybe 13,100, whatever. I have to find. Now, the operative word is F-I-N-D. Check the dictionary and see what it means. It means something is there. It's lost. We don't have it. But it's there to be found. It's not, I want to create, I want to concoct, I want to manufacture. I want you to search through all the votes and see if there are 13,000 votes that have been cast that have not been counted. Now, maybe that's not what Trump meant. Maybe Trump made it up. You can't indict somebody on the basis of what he meant when what he said was clear. So I think that case is over. I don't think there's anything to that case. January 6th. I hate President Trump's speech on January 6th. I think it was one of the worst presidential acts in the history of this country. Getting up there a mile away from the Capitol, basically challenging an election which was completely honest. No election was completely honest in there. There were always mistakes, but Biden was legitimately elected. Getting up there and stirring up the crowd and telling them to go to the Capitol. He had a right to do that. They had a right to do that. I have a client who's a young law student who They went to the Capitol to protest. Perfectly legitimate. But it shouldn't have been done because you had to know that there was a real risk. Not only would they stand outside and cheer and yell, which they had the right to do, but they like and that was wrong. But when the January 6th committee played for the American public that speech, they doctored the tape. They left out 3 words: peacefully and patriotically. They doctored a tape. Can you imagine what would happen if a lawyer said to the court, Your Honor, this is the speech that Donald Trump made and presented it to the judge, and those 3 words had been omitted? It would be sanctioned. And I don't think there's anything to that case unless they can prove beyond the speech that he conspired, that he worked with people, that he knew that they were going to go in. There are those who claim he didn't get them out, but that's not a crime. Crimes of omission are very difficult to make, and the president had no obligation to urge his people to come out. He probably was happy they were inside, but happiness is not a crime, and wanting something to happen is not a crime. So I don't think that's going anywhere. Here's the one that really is a crime, and that is the one that took place right here in this state. His failure to be completely candid with the government about his possession of classified material. Legally, he's guilty. Factually, he's guilty. He'll never be brought to trial. Why? Because politically, you can't prosecute a man running for president against the man he's running against who has also committed the same crime. It just cannot be, even though there are differences. There are differences. There are 2 differences. One that favors Trump, one that favors Biden. Biden acted much more innocently and honestly. He immediately turned over everything he had. Trump did not do that. On the other hand, Trump has a claim, it was a plausible claim, that he declassified material before he left office. The government has to prove that he did not. And proving a negative is not easy to do. So I think that there won't be a prosecution for that crime, because otherwise they would probably have to go after Biden and Pence. Pence also classified material. I said the day I heard about classified material in Trump's house, I said every single former president has classified material in their basement somewhere. Every single one of them. Or in their libraries, which are not controlled necessarily by the archivists. They happen to only get Biden and Pence. But I bet, and Clinton, Hillary Clinton, obviously. But I bet if you went through Obama's papers and if you went through Trump's papers, inadvertently, and I have a solution for this. What I suggested in our bed piece, I think it's in this book, is a technological one. Every piece of classified material, when it's classified, is a stamp. And that stamp has to have should have electronic matter in it, so that anybody with a little wand can just go through it and say, oh, it's beat, it's beat, it's beat. You can't hold on to that material. Otherwise, you're going to have intermingling with papers. It's impossible. I remember I gave all of my papers to Brooklyn College. I went to Brooklyn College for being a shoe salesman in Brownsville. So I gave all my papers to Brooklyn College, and I had to go through every single one of them to make sure there wasn't a single lawyer-client privileged piece of information in any of them. And it took me forever. I couldn't do it. It took me forever. Finally, what I had to do is I went through a lot, and I finally said, these papers, these things might have lawyer-client privilege, probably don't, but might have to be embargoed for 50 years. So, I asked the bar about that, and he said that was okay. But going through, imagine, I was just talking about one person's career as a lawyer. Imagine a president who served for 4 or 8 years, having to go through every piece of paper to determine what's classified, what's secret, what level of classification. So there has to be an electronic way of doing that. So I don't think there's a legitimate basis for going after Trump criminally. I think, in my mind, there's enough for people to make a decision about who to vote for. And that's what democracy is all about. You decide who to vote for based on the totality of the circumstances. So I was asked to say a word or two about the price of principle. The price of principle is a very personal book I about what happened to me and my wife and my family as a result of defending President Trump on the floor of the Senate. I was not only, by the way, the youngest professor in Harvard history, I was the oldest person in American history ever to argue on behalf of the president in this impeachment. So I'm glad to have two parentheses around my career. And as a result of that, we had a community in Martha's Vineyard, probably consisted of 50 people. I've been there since I went there in 1969 to defend Ted Kennedy and Chappaquiddick. And all of my friends pretty much were Democrats. And as a result, and I defended Bill Clinton. I was one of the lawyers on the bill. That wasn't good enough. All of my friends on Martha's Vineyard, with maybe 2 or 3 exceptions, stopped talking to us. Not only stopped talking to us, but warned other people that if they dared to speak to us or proceed with us, they would commit social suicide. To the point where we got invited to an engagement party. And I got an email saying, sorry, Alan, you can't come because if you do, nobody else will come. Your wife can come, but you can't come. But then one day, my wife was working at the gym, and somebody said, oh my God, that's Alan Dershowitz's wife. I can't be in the same room with her. And then one night, I was sitting at a dinner table with Caroline Kennedy, who's been our mom. We went to their home, we're friends. I've been friends with all the Kennedys for forever. And Caroline Kennedy said to me, Alan, if I knew you had been invited, I would not have come. And so that's the level of ostracism. I was probably the leading speaker at the 92nd Street Y in New York. I spoke more than anybody but Elie Wiesel. They canceled me so I could no longer speak there. The Temple Emanuel in New York, the largest reform temple, banned me. The Ramaz School banned me. And I still haven't been unbanned by any of these groups. And so this book, The Price of Principle, is about what happens to you when you stand up for principle. The subtitle is Why Integrity is Worth the Consequences. Well, you know, I have to apologize here to my wife. It's worth the consequences to me. I have a thick skin. I've been doing this for years. I defended O.J. Simpson. I defended Jeffrey Epstein. I also defended Natasha Sharansky and, you know, Ted Kennedy. I have a balance of good versus bad. Oh, by the way, just let me introduce one other point. Just comes to mind. 84 years old. I can't let something slip by because I'll never remember it. In fact, I just forgot it. Oh, yes, here's what it is. A judge the other day ruled that lawyer-client privilege between Trump and his lawyer were obviated because Trump lied to his lawyer. Now, I had 250 criminal clients, approximately. 248 of them lied. Maybe 249, maybe 247. The way it usually works is this. At the first meeting, they come in and they say, you know, well, a misdemeanor becomes a felony if the intent was to hide a felony. It's a strange combination, but, you know, as Justice Jackson, who was probably the greatest attorney general in our history, one of the greatest justices, said, any prosecutor can rummage through the statute books, thousands of laws, and find something, some law, some regulation with which to charge anybody. And that's why it's the goal of the prosecutor to find the crime first and then look for the person, rather than find the person and then look for the crime. And what they did is look for the crime here, and they couldn't find it, so they created it, and they manufactured it. The worst prosecutor would be.
And what is your next book? I know you're busy trying to selling this one, but what was ruminating in that head?
Well, I always have 2 or 3 books on my head. So I have finished a book called Killing, How the Law Determines Who Shall Live and Who Shall Die. I'm working on a book called The Protected State. I'm working on a book which is interesting. You might have noticed when I took the Pledge of Allegiance, I left out 2 words. I very consciously leave out 2 words. Under God. I don't believe that the government has the right to make you pledge to a deity under God. So I'm writing a book which is called Why I Daven Like an Orthodox Church. Daven is like to pray. Why I Daven Like an Orthodox Orthodox Jew to think like an agnostic and behave like an atheist. And how do I know I behave like an atheist? Because I know from empirical experience. Taking my son to college was one of the greatest moments of my life, taking my first son to college. It was at the University of Colorado. I got back on the airplane to go to New York, and it was over Labor Day weekend, and the plane gets up to about 12,000 feet, the pilot says, we have a very serious problem. Is there anybody here who has experienced disaster control? A couple of former Marines get up, pilot gives them axes. Everybody get your belts off, take off your high heel shoes, take off your glasses, we're gonna have a crash landing. And the instructor had to do it, had to do the brace position, we did the brace position, and you have an hour, because I had to dump fuel before we do the crash landing. It was terrifying. Everybody around me was some crying, some praying, a lot of rosaries came out, a lot of crosses, a lot of stars of David. It never occurred to me for 1 second to think about God. I just opened up a pad and wrote letters to each of my children and put the letters in my shaving case so that they would be protected from impact. I thought at least 50-50 I would die. But it never occurred to me to think about God or to pray to God. So I discovered that I was an agnostic. I can't be an atheist because I can never know for sure. In fact, I just wrote an essay. They asked me to write an essay for the book saying elevator arguments for God. You know, if you're in an elevator, and there were and some very, very prominent people, about 100 people. They asked me to write one. They asked me, I can't do that. I said, but I can write an elevator essay, an argument against not believing in God. And so I did my argument. And my basic argument is this. I can understand evolution. I can understand how a little amoeba turns into ultimately an elephant or a human being. I can understand that. I can even understand the Big Bang Theory, how a little tiny particle becomes a universe. What I cannot understand is how something becomes something from nothing. I can't understand the concept of something from nothing. You know, there's a prayer in the Jewish liturgy called Adon Olam. It's about God's virtues, and it has two phrases in it: the terem kol and the acharei keflot hakol. The terem kol is translated before anything, and acharei keflot hakol is after everything is gone, and God will reign. God will reign before anything. God will reign after anything. And I once asked my students, I used to teach a seminar for freshmen at Harvard, I gave them those two phrases, and I asked them to write an essay describing before anything or describing after everything. And you can't do it. You can't get outside of that. So until I can figure out that something can come from nothing, I have to postulate the possibility of a creator of some kind. I don't know what that would be like. I have no idea. But so my thinking has always been like an agnostic. Even when I was in yeshiva as a young student studying the Talmud all day and being hit by my rabbis, I was always a doubter, always a skeptic, and that's what I get by my rabbis. Oh yes, of course. Henry.
An Alvin Bragg question.
Yeah.
So he is pursuing this impossible Jerry Bill case. A year ago, he pursued something which looked like maybe there was some substance to it, namely overvaluing assets for purposes of getting loans and undervaluing assets for purposes of getting his real estate taxes forward. So he decided very shortly after he comes into office, he's not going to pursue that case anymore. And his two top prosecutors resigned in very loud protest. Right? Do you have any idea or speculation as to what happened there?
Yeah.
And then, as part of the color commentary, if you want to offer tailgating on this gentleman's question, whether Alvin Bragg, if you were aware of his name in class course, and whether you had any impression.
I don't remember Alvin Bragg. I do remember you. You were a great lawyer for 50 years advising civil clients. And my question back to you is, would prosecutors have anything else to do in the city of New York if they started prosecuting real estate people who understated the value for taxes and overstated it for value? The question is, it's done by everybody, it shouldn't be done. And again, what should happen is there should be a law. And the law has to say, if you overstate by more than 10%, which means everybody's going to go up to 9%, if you overstate by more than 10%, you're guilty. If you're understate by more than 10%. But it would be an example of selective prosecution. And I suspect Bragg thought that, and his zealot prosecutors, who I also know, the ones who quit, were really zealots. Very good, very excellent prosecutors.
Isn't being
Civilly.
if you look at civilly, like the Attorney General of the state of New York,
It's
he's
being
on the same one. I don't know how she would have done that because he paid off his loan.
Look, I had a case a few years ago, some of you may know about this case. It's called the Ravashkin case. It was an Orthodox Jew, a Chassid, who went to Idaho, or Iowa. I'm sure the people who live there do. But Iowa, I think he went to Iowa and opened up a meatpacking company. And he was charged and convicted of something like that, of getting loans from a bank by overstating the receivables or something like that. They gave him 23 years in prison for it. I got a pardon. No, a commutation, not a pardon. But what happened was the government in that case, when it came to sentencing, he was going to sell the company at a profit and thereby pay off all of the bank loans and everything, and that would have brought the guidelines down to about less than 5 years. But the government threatened every buyer not to buy it, because if they bought it, the government would come after them and take it away. So as a result of government action, the banks lost millions of dollars. Guidelines went up from 5 years to 25 years. That's how we got the pardon. We made that argument. Any more? Then we'll,
Yeah, you've had a fascinating career. You've created a whole bunch of debates with my siblings and I for many decades. So really enjoyed a lot of your opinions. And you clearly paid a huge price based on principle. I had a coach in the mid-'80s by the name of Stephen Covey, and he wrote a book which is all about principles. Take me through what goes through your mind if 297 out of 300 of your clients on their fourth meeting admit they're guilty. What do you have to do to get in a position with the principles you have to defend?
okay, it's a great question. First, 297 know that they're guilty, they just want a deal.
Okay.
Some of them say, look, let me tell you about a case, one quick case, and we'll give you some idea. Represented a doctor from San Diego, California. He specialized, he was a surgeon, an eye surgeon, and he specialized, this is a long time ago, so I have to remember, he specialized in something called ptosis, which was when the eyelids droop or something like that. It's a medical issue. But San Diego has a lot of pilots, and so a lot of the pilots had that, and it interfered with their vision. And Medicaid, Medicare, whatever it was, covered the actual medical condition. But he was indicted for fraudulently billing Medicaid for having ptosis, which would be covered, but for cosmetic surgery. Some people just don't want their eyelids to droop, but it doesn't have any impact on their eyes. It's a matter of degree. And so he had hired a leading expert from New England, whatever it's called, orthopedic, whatever, the eye place connected to Mass General Hospital. And that expert said, no, what he had done was really medical. But the government had an expert who said it was not medical, it was a cosmetic, and the circumstantial evidence was that he did too many of them on a given day for it to be medical, which takes more time. I don't remember both details of the case. He hired me for for one job. He said, I have to make the hardest decision of my life. I've been offered 1 year in prison to be served at home, loss of my license for 5 years, if I plead guilty, and if I plead not guilty, I'm going to get 11 years. So it's called the trial penalty. It's one of the most obscene aspects of our American justice system. You get an additional 10 years, not for committing crime, but for committing the worst crime of pleading innocent. And so I did a very careful analysis. I spent a lot of time on it. I went through all the expert testimony. I hired jury consultants because this guy was quite wealthy and he wanted to make the right decision. And I wrote him a long analysis saying it's 40-60, I think. And you asked me for a number. I said 40% likely you'll be convicted and 60% likely that you'll be acquitted. It's more likely than not that you'll be acquitted. But it's very close. He said, good, that means I'll go to trial. I said, no, that means you can't go to trial. If it's 40-60, and it's 11 years if you're convicted, and no years, and just 5 years of staying at home and playing with your grandchildren, you have to plead guilty. And he refused. And he was convicted. He served his 11 years. And his father died immediately the day he was sentenced. He dropped dead of a heart attack. These are the kinds of horrible, horrible, horrible choices that criminal defense lawyers have to help a client make. The first thing you tell them is it's your choice, it's your decision. So a lot of my clients are guilty. Quite a few of them are not guilty. Look, I'll tell you a story about 2 boys on death row. I represented 2 boys. There's a movie made about it called The Killer in the Family with Carolyn. You'll remind me who the star actor was. Okay, you'll think of it in a second. One of us will think of it. But it was a good movie. And what happened is this man was convicted of murder and murdering a guard when he was escaping from court where he was already convicted of robbery. Not a good guy. And so he was sentenced to life imprisonment, as you can imagine. And he had 3 young children. And he persuaded his 3 children that he had killed the guard as part of a CIA operation. He was a CIA agent, a real hero. And his idiot sons, believed him. And when one of them was 18, one was 17, one was 19, one was 18, one was 17, they decided to break him out of prison. And they succeeded. They had brought him fried chicken, and under the fried chicken were guns. And they didn't have a metal detector for some dumb reason. And he and his cellmate got the guns. He had promised the kids not a shot would be fired, and they managed to escape without a shot being fired. Amazing. And they had a car waiting for them. And the car drove toward the Mexican border where they were heading to escape. And sure enough, all 4 tires of the car, one after the other, went down. And so they decided to try to hijack another car. And so they sent one of the young boys out to wave the car down, and then the father and the cellmate who had the guns held up, we was a family of 5, this is a terrible story, a family of 5, including a soldier, a young girl, 2 other people, and they switched cars. And that would have been fun. But the father and the cellmate decided they couldn't leave them alive because they would tell their location in the car, and they were deep in the woods. And the kids said, they didn't know that the parents had told the people who decided that. And the kids said, the father said, we're just going to leave them here. And the kids said, look, they're not going to have water, they're going to die because their hands are tied and stuff like that. So the father said to the kids, go down to the car and bring water up and then leave them with water. And as soon as the kids went to the car, the father and the roommate killed the entire family. And cold blood. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And then and the police ultimately caught up with them. There was a roadblock. The older son was killed in the shootout at the roadblock. The father and the father survived, and the other roommate survived, and they all separated. The father went into the woods and was found 5 days later dead. The only survivors, therefore, were the two young sons, 17, 18, and the other guy, Greenwald, the other criminal. And the sons were offered a deal to testify against the older man, Greenwald, in exchange for saving their lives. And for some reason, they wouldn't do it, because they were also asked who else was involved, and the mother was involved as well, but she had never been arrested. And so they sentenced all three of them to death. They sentenced Greenwald to death, who deserved it, and they sentenced the two young boys to death. And I was asked by the ACLU to handle the case of the two young boys, pro bono. I had to save up my mustache because it was the Arizona Supreme Court, and I had to get a haircut, and to become a well-behaved, very well-dressed lawyer. I argued a case in the Arizona Supreme Court, and I lost. And eventually I would take the case up to the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court eventually remanded it back, and we won. We saved the lives of these two young boys. Are they guilty or not guilty? I mean, these are, they're guilty of breaking their father out of prison, but they weren't guilty of the murder. Those are the kinds of cases you get, close cases, where there's, people are not good people. But they often are less bad than the government would have projected them. So, what you try to do when you're a defense lawyer is you try to see the virtue in every person. It doesn't always work. Not every person has a virtue. And you'd be surprised at who the people are who have no virtues. I can only name this person because it's a public matter. But the case I most, the two cases I most regret taking, one was Leona Helmsley, the Queen of Mean, the one who hangs all over hotels in New York. She was the meanest, nastiest person I have ever met in my life. And what happened, I defended her case and I got a great result. And one day we were sitting preparing the case in her hotel in New York, and I ordered tea, and the waiter, a young Hispanic man, brought the tea, and in the saucer was a little bit of the tea, but liquid. She looked at it, she got furious, she threw the teacup and the saucer on a floor like this, a granite floor. It broke into a dozen pieces, and she said to this man in front of all the other people in the restaurant, now get down on your hands and knees and beg me to get your job back. And I said, Leona, I will never be seen to leave the public again. I am your lawyer, but I am not your friend. I will defend you, but don't try to have any relationship with me. So that's a case I regret. We did very well on that case, but I regret that case. The other one, of course, was Jeffrey Epstein. Not because of defending Jeffrey Epstein, that's my job, but because as a result of that, I was falsely accused of something I didn't do for 8 years. It hung over me. It cost me over $2 million in legal fees. Over $2 million in legal fees to fight the false accusation. What about if you don't have the money? How do you fight false accusations? It's impossible today. And so, those are the cases. Okay. Last question, and then we'll go home. Great.
Thank you so much for coming. Okay, so you were just saying there are some cases where the government makes the people out to be worse than they might be. I'm like you, I also really love a debate, but I'm a conservative and I definitely don't have any Democrat friends that enjoy a debate. So I'm happy to have you here today. When you said about the government having some people that they think are worse than they truly are, have you, in that light, have you considered or looked at some of the people that may be behind bars for January 6th?
Yes.
Yeah, because there are some people there that, if, to a conservative, it makes us feel that there is like no justice system. There's no bail, they don't have, they have public defenders, and then the good lawyers don't want to defend them because they might lose their clout or their social status, and it just feels like the end of America.
Well, so Ron Sullivan and I are defending a young man who has been arrested for the felony of entering into the Capitol. He was a law student. He finished his courses in law school. The law school withheld his degree. Pending the outcome of the case, you can't generalize. There were people on January 6th who did terrible things, and they should be prosecuted to the hilt. And there are people who did nothing wrong. My client came with no intention of entering the Capitol. He was there to protest. He strongly believes the election was fixed, that it was fraudulent, and he and I agreed not to talk about that. I like him very much. And he was there with a friend, and suddenly he sees one of the doors open, and policemen, we have this on video, waving him in. And he went in, and he is guilty of trespassing, even though there's a case called Whaley versus Ohio, which if the police, basically, I just took the driver's exam for Florida. Now, I got all A's in law school. I was first in my class. I came this close to flunking the driver's exam in Florida. Here was the first question. The first question I sent it to my client. The first question was, you're driving down the street, and there is a red light, and the police officer waves you through the red light. You, A, go immediately through the red light. B, you pause to make sure there are no cars coming the other way. Then you go through the red light. And then C and D was stupid. So I said, cautious driver, you pause, you stop, you look to see that there's no cars coming through the crosswalk, and then you go. Wrong. You drive straight through. The policeman is ready to see that there's no cars, and he's waving you through. So I have over 1 on passing law questions, but I sent that immediately to my client because we're going to use it in our brief. We're going to actually use it in our brief to argue that when a policeman waves you in, you are obligated to go in. You will pause, you will stop. I got my driver's license. I passed. We were allowed to get 13 wrong. I got 11 wrong. So I got like a 65. I haven't got a 65 on an exam since high school. But so I have great compassion for people who didn't get that. But who is representing him with me? Ron Sullivan. Let me tell you one word about Ron Sullivan, who's one of my heroes. And then we'll leave. Ron Sullivan is an African-American liberal Democrat who teaches at Harvard Law School, one of the great teachers at Harvard Law School. He was also the first black dean of any Harvard college. He was the black dean of one of the great colleges. He and his wife, Stephanie, were deans together. They were great deans. And he, like me, believes that everybody deserves defense. And he was called by Harvey Weinstein to represent him. And he did for a month. And the students revolted. And they said, you have to fire this guy. And Ron Sullivan, because he represented Harvey Weinstein for 1 month, was fired as the first person dean ever fired. He was the first black dean, then the first dean ever fired. He's a great guy. We worked together on a number of cases. So he and I are representing this young man together. Neither of us, are support what happened on January 6th. Again, we're both liberal Democrats. But we both believe very strongly in the right of representation. We also believe in a single standard of justice. We're not getting that on the January 6th events. And the judges in the District of Columbia are having special rules for these January 6th defendants. You can just see it. They're ruling one after the other against them on every motion because none of them wants to be perceived as the judge who let free the guy on January 6th. So I think we're up for tremendous injustice. Fortunately, in our system of checks and balances, some of these cases may get to the Supreme Court, which may look at some of these matters a little bit differently. Look, life's complex, law is complex, relationships are complex, politics is complex. I love complexity. You talk about how I suffered, I've had a good life. The last 8 years have been difficult for my family and for me, but I refuse to submit. I'm fighting back. People in my family say, stop fighting. You're 84 years old. You should just sit back and walk on the beach. I do walk on the beach. But I also fight back, and I'm going to continue to fight back. And I'm gonna continue to vote Democrat unless they nominate, Bernie Sanders, in which case I will not vote for him. Nor would I think when I vote for some others. Say it again?